Oh, happy birthday, Charles.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Weiss. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ and Friends. Today is the third Friday of the month, which means it's time for The Doctor is In, which is a live Q&A with none other than Dr. Ron Weiss. He answers your questions. We do try to take them live from the chat, but it's much better if you can submit them in advance. Just go to help@chefaj.com or just go to chefaj.com and sign up for my newsletter. Every week we send you a little nice email. Sometimes it's recipes, but we always tell you who's going to be on the show because that way I can save them and always ask them if I don't get to them a certain month. Please welcome Dr. Weiss. Happy almost holidays. Isn't it interesting that Hanukkah and Christmas are the same day this year?
It is. They start on the exact same day, right? And most unusual for Hanukkah is that it goes into the new year of the right the Roman calendar, which
I've
is
never known,
it rarely does that.
yeah, I've never remember Hanukkah to be all the way in January.
Yeah. I remember it once or twice. That's it in my whole existence. But yeah, it is unusual. Yeah. So yeah, interesting times. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it's doing by you, but we have our valley. I'm looking out the window now, blanketed in a soft blanket of snow.
Well, I'm glad we don't have snow, but it is cold here. I never knew coming from the desert where it was routinely 116 to 122, which I love because I must be part lizard. It's like 34 degrees here every morning. It's so cold.
Yeah. Because of the elevation, right?
I don't know why, and it rains a lot. And the thing is, one of the reasons I moved here, and people wonder why I left, because I'm been in Southern California pretty much my whole life. I'm good friends, and I also have lots of sessions with Dr. Doug Lisle, and I loved so much about the desert, especially the weather and the beauty. And the thing is, I couldn't make any friends, or at least not vegan friends. And up here in Northern California, I don't know why it's a mecca for veganism. My friend
Hmm.
Linda Middlesworth has the Sacramento Vegan Society with almost 6,000 members, and my meetup has almost 2,000. And there's just, I don't know why there's so many health-oriented people here. But in the desert, we had 6 vegan friends. 4 of them moved after the pandemic. So we were down to 2 friends, Steve and Linda, our neighbors. And Linda's my VA, if anybody wants to know, if you write to help desk, she usually answers you. But it just wasn't enough friends for me. I tried to start a meetup, I tried to teach classes, and Dr. Lyle once said to me that a person's social ecology is pretty much the number one predictor of their happiness. And so I'm wondering, is it better to be freezing cold with a million friends or be nice and warm with 2?
I think buy yourself a coat.
Yeah, you should
Like,
see me.
because I
I
think,
bought,
yeah, there are many ways to say it or different ways to articulate it. But what Dr. Lyle talked about the social ecology, right?
yeah.
And that's life's, that's a pillar of lifestyle medicine, right? So just I can't say it's less important or just as important or more important, but they're major pillars. And we know even from the blue zones, right, which has a lot of data, that social connection is a major determinant of you doing well and having a health span and longevity. So I welcome to Northern California, Chef Agent.
Yeah. When I was little, I lived in Chicago and I remember it was really cold, but I left when I was 11 for LA, for which I lived till almost the age of 60. I did go to Penn and I remember Philadelphia was really cold, but I just prefer warm weather. It's funny, we keep our temperature inside the house at 80 all year round, and everybody that comes over is like dying. But
It's fencing.
luckily
Yeah.
I'm married to somebody that has the same body type and body, it's okay as long as you're married to somebody that agrees with how warm it should be in the
Yeah.
house.
Well, the other thing is that I noticed this myself specifically when I went whole food plant-based. Um, I became a cold person. I became cold intolerant. Um, and I think what happens is I lost my visceral fat, right? When you're eating well, you have less insulation and you become less tolerant of the cold. And I've noticed, whereas before, when the spring came, I would put away here's my winter coat, you know, right? And it's a big, thick winter coat. I'm wearing this into May now here in New Jersey, And I would always just be wearing a jacket in April. I can't wear a jacket anymore. So I hear you. I think the cold intolerance is like a badge of honor. It means I find that commonly with people who are eating high levels of whole plant.
Okay, well, good to know. Yeah, you're
And you
right.
know why I would think it's better that you live in Northern California versus Southern?
Why?
Because they can't grow. Well, I can't say they can't grow, but you know what you can grow in Northern California that generally is not good in Southern California? Apples.
Oh
And
my
you know
God.
what they say, an
An
apple a
apple a
day.
day keeps the doctor away. Well, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about apples because so I have these two apples here, and my favorite apple has always been the envy apple. I think it's named that because it's the envy of all the other apples because it tastes so good. And these are organic. You can get them at Costco, Whole Foods, Sprouts, even Rayleigh's. And then I got this unusual, not as good looking apple, and it came in the mail. And I wondered, is this like Snow White? And is it a poison apple? So well, what do you think of this apple? Why does this
Okay.
apple
Well,
look different than this apple?
okay. Okay. I have some splaining to do,
Yeah.
AJ. So as they say, oftentimes beauty is only skin deep. And so what everyone should know is the apple on the right, if you want to hold it up again,
Okay. The
I grew
yellow
that
apple.
apple. I grew that apple for you, AJ,
Wow.
because and maybe I sent it to you because maybe you eat that apple, it'll keep me away. Uh, I'm not sure, but it has been my one of my great passions for since we've gotten the farm to grow apples in New Jersey without pesticides and chemicals and with nutrient dense apples environmentally. And this is the frontier of organic farming in the Northeast. I know it's possible in California to grow it where you are because you have the right kind of climate. It's like more like Kazakhstan where you are, and you don't have as many pests and enemies there. But in the East, we're loaded with 500 different enemies, funguses, insects that are always coming for these apples. And so it's literally unknown to grow an apple in the Northeast without dousing it with pesticides. And so this was hand grown by me for you. No chemical has ever tasted it. And what helped me to do this is that it's a special apple. This apple is called Gold Rush, Goldrush, with a capital G and a capital R. It came out of the PRI breeding program, Purdue, Rutgers, and Illinois in the 1970s, 60s, 70s. These three universities, and of course, I'm in New Jersey where Rutgers is, got together to breed apples that were resistant to these diseases that could be grown here. And there were about 50 different apples that was produced by the program, and this one is my favorite. It is highly resistant to 4 different fungal diseases that we have here. So I can grow it with less work, although still an enormous amount of work. It's a lot. It was a constant job to grow this apple for you. And so I don't want to tell you why I like it, but do you want to taste it
Yeah,
and tell me?
absolutely.
You can't get these in stores. You can't get them. You can get the Envy in stores, but I've never seen a Gold Rush in store because I don't think it's really grown commercially. It should be. I don't know why it's not.
Okay.
It was released about 40 years ago, 45 years ago.
Have you ever heard of the opal apple? It's a yellow apple that I
Yes, I like that one too. These days I'm eating Opal, Envy, and Gold Rush. I like the Gold Rush better than all of them, but I think we have similar tastes.
Okay, well we're both Aries. Okay, I like to
Well, wait. Okay. Okay. I don't know which one you want. Is this a taste test?
Yeah, this is well no, I'm gonna just start with your apple and I'll know right
Okay.
away. I
Go
like
ahead.
this little apple cutter because it cuts it into
I
six.
do. I too. I love that too.
Yeah, I'll send you one. It's because it's better than eight because then you get it's like you get more
Okay.
pieces.
Can I Can I make a suggestion? I don't mean
Sure.
to interrupt you. Let's do a mindful, let's just dig into this mindfully. Yeah.
Okay.
Like you do a wine tasting,
I
like you
don't know
have
because
to,
I have never drank alcohol.
I don't either, but I see them doing that. They sip it and then
Yeah.
they chew it a little bit. Take about 10 seconds, just bite it, sense the texture of it
Yeah.
and the different levels of flavor, smell it, and tell me what's going on. Because you're a chef.
Okay.
I know you know subtleties of
Well,
flavors.
this
Tell me
smells like
what's
a
going on with the
this smells
texture
like
and the flavor.
this smells like a 2024 New Jersey. No. Okay. So here we go. All right. I'm gonna It's very crisp. It's very moist. It's a different flavor than a traditional yellow apple.
Have you ever eaten an apple like that from the supermarket?
No, this would make a great pie.
It would. And guess what? That apple stays intact without refrigeration until May in your basement. It's it's a good what they call the old days keeper. Here in New Jersey, where many wonderful apples originated from, we didn't have refrigeration in the 1700s. So they would breed apples that would stay a long time. And this has that quality.
Yeah,
So I
I would,
love this apple because it has a potato. It has like a raw potato like crunch. It has a starch. Like there's this starchy. I don't know. There's something about it as a breaking flesh. I don't know. I shipped it to you like about 10 days ago, and it hasn't been refrigerated. But I like its complexity of it. It is tart, but also there's a sweetness
yeah, I was
that's
gonna
in there.
say it is both sweet and tart at the same time.
And the opal has that quality.
Yep. I like that it's crisp. I don't like mushy fruit. I notice a lot of
Hate
times,
hate mushy apple.
I
Hate them.
notice that when I buy produce at the store, especially things like carrots, they have no taste whatsoever anymore.
The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send you one of our carrots and you're going to taste this carrot. I promise.
And the same thing with cherry tomatoes. I was visiting my friend Kelly Williamson, who's a chef that's been on this show many times, and she grows her cherry tomatoes. And there's such a difference between food that's grown the way you do it and commercial produce, even when it's
Yeah.
organic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the procedure I had, the lung biopsy, because
Yeah.
I made a funny post on social media because I didn't take the bandage off for 3 days. I probably could have taken it off sooner, but I couldn't reach it. And then there was this cross on my back, and I thought, "Whoa, is that a sign? Do they always put a cross on your back?" Like,
No, that's right. They did that. That was the needle. They put the trocar, which is the sleeve of the needle, on that point, and they had to, it's so remarkable. And this is what we should spend money, right, on doing to develop technologies like this. Not necessarily new drugs, but that technology, what they did was, I'm assuming they stereotactically, in other words, using complicated measurements and calculations together with imaging, they picked a point on your back, and that point was marked with an X, and the intersection of the X, I call it an X, like X marks the spot, was where the trocar, the sleeve of the needle, was pushed to go into your lung and get that. Because this area that they were trying to, it's not that large. They have to make sure that they get it. And so that was the mark of the exacting navigation. That was like a navigational mark that they put to make sure that they ended up in the right place.
but do they always do it as an X like this, or do they I mean,
Yes,
they don't
it's an
do it
X.
like this. They never do it like.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not an interventional radiologist or a radiation oncologist who uses stuff like this. I don't know, but interesting. It may be because they're measuring, the measurements are in planes, vertical and horizontal planes. They're not on diagonals. Maybe that's why.
I thought maybe it was because
But I don't think it's a religious thing.
but my doctor was
Chef
Catholic. My doctor was Catholic, so I thought maybe that was just a
Yeah. But
anyway.
everyone knows that the thing you are holding in your hand,
Oh
right?
yeah, everybody wants one now. I mean, I got more texts and emails. Where do you get this? On Amazon, about $20. So yeah, my figure
Yeah.
was this. Also, it's good because if he hurt me too much, since I didn't have sedation, I
Right.
could just give him a knuckle punch, right?
It can turn the other cheek to watch out.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it was over before I knew it. It barely hurt. There was one little moment where I said, ouch, but compared to having an endoscopy without sedation, this was a piece of
Yeah.
kale. Piece of kale.
Well, I'm glad I wanted to let you know that my family who lives in Teaneck, and I think they contacted you. Teaneck is they have a large religious Jewish community, and their whole congregation was saying prayers for you. So
That's so nice. I really
that's
so
that's on top of the cross.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate, you know what I did? Because not everybody believes in God, and that's cool. So I asked the people that didn't to send me jokes instead of prayers, and I got one that I love so much that I want to share with you, and you can share it with your patients. You might know the answer.
Go
So,
ahead.
Dr. Weiss, what is the difference between an oral thermometer and a rectal thermometer?
What is the difference?
The taste, of course.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That was one of
Wow.
my favorites. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Keep sending them, guys. I love the jokes.
Yeah.
So this isn't all fun and games because we have questions that you guys sent in advance that we want to answer. So let's start with the first one from Melina. I love this question because it's kind of general, not just specific about the person. So you can speak to it for as long or as short as you like. And she would like to know, and I don't know the answer to this either, what is LP little a? Why is it important? And can anything be done about it? My cardiologist here said there's nothing to do about it. So why test it?
Well, that is an amazing question. And let me start by saying that LP little a is an abbreviation for lipoprotein A. And they say little a because it's a lowercase a, not a uppercase a. So it's lipoprotein is one word, and then it's followed by a lowercase a. And what this is it's the most prominent test that we have, an evidence-based test that predicts a genetically inherited risk to get heart attacks and strokes. So if you have this, in medical school, when I was being trained, Chef AJ, they would always say, oh, when you're talking to a patient and you want to assess, could this guy have a heart attack or could they have coronary artery disease or what's their risk? There were these major risk factors that you had to ask them, like, do you smoke? Are you overweight? Do you have a high cholesterol? And one of these major risk factors was your family history. Did your mother have a heart attack? Did your father? Did your grandfather? Did your uncle? So that was a major, that is still to this day considered a major influence on whether you will get coronary disease and a heart attack. And this one test is the evidence, the best evidence we have for that risk factor. It's a blood test that can be done on any patient, and it shows whether you have inherited genes that make you prone, they're lipoprotein little a genes, to getting a heart attack and stroke, cardiovascular event. So there are many people who have these genes. I would say offhand, I check every patient in my practice for it. And I would say offhand, maybe a third of all people that I see have it elevated, something like that. So I know a lot of the audience is probably thinking themselves, well, if I'm one of those, that third, I'm doomed because you can't change your genes, right? Whatever you inherited, the DNA you inherited from your mother and father, that's it. It's in my genes. Like we often hear that. It's in my genes. It's my family gene. I can't do anything about it. But I always tell patients, and this is one of the reasons why I love Dr. Esselstyn so much, really, because of this saying. And I believe it does come from him originally. Your bullets load, your genes, I'm sorry, let me start again. Your genes are the bullets loaded into the gun. What you eat pulls the trigger. So if you have these genes that have determined that you too have an elevated lipoprotein little a, can we change your genes? We can't. You got those genes, it makes you who you are. But the beauty of what Dr. Esselstyn says is that it's the food you eat that can decide whether the genes give you a heart attack or not. Just because you have the potential from those genes to get a heart attack, it doesn't mean that you have to get a heart attack. And in fact, the opposite is true. We now know, and we have a lot of evidence, that if you eat in a certain way, so if you have this test and it's high, it's elevated for these genes that you have that determine that you're going to get a heart attack. If you eat a high level diet of whole plant foods, Chef AJ, you can lower it.
That's
How
amazing.
can you lower a test that's elevated from genes you inherited? That doesn't make any sense. And I know it sounds crazy, but plants are so powerful that it's not that they can change the genes. The genes are always in you. But what happens is the plant molecules get on top of your genes and they influence them to change their expression. And that's how you can modify this test. So I disagree with the cardiologist. It's not, it's not a fait accompli. If you have this test, and I use the reason why I get this test is because I get it as an incentive to have people eat better. Because if you knew that you had an elevated lipoprotein A, and if I showed you the evidence that some of our patients knock it down by as much as 50%, a 50% reduction by eating whole plant foods. So if you knew that, you'd say, oh, well, then my future is in my hands. It's not my destiny because of what I inherited. I can have, like Dr. S said, I can direct my future. And that's why I get it. And there is a lot, I always, in people who eat well, it always goes down. I don't ever remember it not dropping in my practice. And that's why I get it. At the end of the year of them visiting with me, I get it when they enter, and then I get the lipoprotein little a when they leave. And if it's elevated, there's always a significant drop. Now, having said that, there are some people who have such a genetic risk for it that it's really high. And those people, it does go down. But I just wanted to make the public aware that, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, I don't know if you know who he is, but you and he were here at the farm, right, during our farm days in September. And he let us know that he has an example, a patient who has publicized this, who for the first time has shown that long-term water fasting for, I think it was a week, can, from what we know of on a long-term, that can lower lipoprotein little a. And I have to follow up with him regarding, because we have patients who have had elevated lipoprotein little a's, have dropped it with food, and now I have a patient now who's fasting to drop it again. But the potential is there for water fasting over a long period of time to potentially permanently get you another drop. So that's the story with lipoprotein little a. I do think it's a valuable test, and that's what it is.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So you're going to like this. Yeah, I think you'll like this next question because I know your father died of cancer. What kind of cancer was it?
It was pancreatic cancer.
Then for sure, because here's what the question is. And that's what my brother died of. And my brother only lasted 3 months after diagnosis, and he was 60 years old. So Jay Nesbitt3 from Instagram is asking this question. There is such an increase in pancreatic cancer. How much does diet have to do with this cancer?
I think almost everything. Almost everything. When I say almost everything, I would say 98% of all pancreatic cancers. The reason why I say that is because there are some other risk factors that we know of. For example, we know that smoking doubles your risk of getting pancreatic cancer. We know that there are some familial genetically inherited cancer syndromes, of which pancreatic cancer can be part of. But remember what I just told you about, right? Your genes and genetic risk for getting things. Even those kinds of genetically inherited cancer risks, even we highly suspect even those can be helped by diet. So I think that the lion's share of pancreatic cancer is due to diet. And here's why I think that. Since I graduated medical school, pancreatic cancer is basically double in incidence. That's like over 35 years. Like, what the heck is that? What else is almost doubled or skyrocketed? Our poor diets, obesity, diabetes, right? We know that people who are overweight and people who have diabetes also have increased risk of getting pancreatic cancer. So there are these associations. Now, can I prove to you that I can't? Can I prove to you that the poor diet that causes the pancreatic cancer? I can't prove it to you, but there are these very high these associated trends that are occurring with other conditions that are occurring with the increase in pancreatic cancer. So I would say yes, that food is a major determinant. And the last reason why, for me, it's ironclad is because of my father. What do I mean by that? My father, at age 70, was, he was overweight, and he was eating an omnivorous diet. He never ate junk. It was like a whole diet, but your chicken, meat, vegetables, just everything. And he was an attorney, he was diagnosed with end-stage pancreatic cancer. We took him to the best cancer hospital in the world. Like your brother, he was given like 90 days, 60 to 90 days to live. He was near the end because his symptoms of abdominal pain came on all of a sudden. But even when he was diagnosed, it was very late. Like, he had tumors all over the place, including in his liver. It was stage 4. And so there was really nothing they could do for him. They told him to go get his affairs in order, and we took him home. And then serendipitously, I went to the public library, and I just came across a book of someone who had overcome their late-stage pancreatic cancer by eating a diet of whole plant foods. I gave it to my father. He said, "Sure, I'll do it." And what happened next was miraculous. I thought was At the time, I was a young doctor, 1 year out of training. I thought it was almost like a spiritual or a religious experience, because I couldn't believe this was happening. It was like magic. As soon as he started eating, he stopped eating, the meat and the potatoes and the whatever, the lox and the bagels, and eating the plants. His severe abdominal pain went away within a day or so. He was on narcotics. He was a lawyer. He went back to work in his office a week later. He had no more pain. 2 weeks later, he went to the gym. 3 weeks later, he started running. It just was unbelievable, his improvement. 3 months later, we got a CAT scan on him. His tumors were 1/3 reduced in size. 6 months later, we got another CAT scan, 50% reduced in size. 1 year later, he was still doing well. And we took him back to the cancer hospital to see if there were like any new developments or discoveries and treatment, and there weren't. But when the doctor found out that he was eating kale and brown rice and root vegetable, he lost complete interest and just changed the conversation to the old chemotherapy that didn't work. And that's when I decided at that point that I'm not going to be this kind of doctor. Something happened with my father, and I was convinced of it because it was like someone hit a switch with the diet. And because he never accepted any other treatment. He didn't. It's not like he was doing chemo and the diet, radiation and the diet. He just went home and he just was very strict. And he ate this food, and all of a sudden the cancer started shrinking away. And the reason why we know it was pancreatic cancer is because he had the pancreatic tumor markers. They were elevated. They went down too. We saw the pictures on the screen going down. So that's my case report to you. And to me, that's the proof I needed to know that pancreatic cancers are due to diet, because his diet caused it. And likewise, when we changed his diet, it made it regress significantly and quickly. Chef AJ, would you say food, there's a link between what you eat and pancreatic cancer?
Well, I mean,
based on this story?
Yeah, but other people say, they want to see a study because, how do you
I know.
How much longer did he live after the diagnosis? And you said you took him to
He lived 18 months.
Okay, that's
instead of like 90 days, it was 18 months. But he ended up doing what he loved the best, which was working in his law office in a poor neighborhood of Paterson, New Jersey, up until about 2 weeks before he passed away. And the vast majority of quality of his life was good. Most importantly, he thought he was going to, when he was diagnosed, he was a death sentence. He knew he was going to die. And for most of an added year, he thought he was going to triumph. So those things were of a measurable value. I think what ended up happening with him in the end is the cancer was just so far advanced that it was just, I think it helped in the beginning, but he just couldn't overcome everything. And so eventually he declined again.
You mentioned you took him to the best cancer hospital. What is that? And is it still the best one today?
Sloan Kettering. Yeah.
But does it matter which type of cancer you have? Which is the best cancer hospital?
To me, they're all probably Sloan Kettering was the first. Don't quote me. And I know your listeners, I'm trying to be as accurate as I can because I don't like giving misinformation. But I believe Sloan Kettering was the first cancer hospital. It was founded by a doctor who I can't recall his name right now, but he was the first person to have the idea of giving poison to kill cancer cells, of trying to give drugs that would kill cancer cells without killing people. And he wasn't very successful in the beginning. I think he did give some drugs that did kill the cancers, but also killed his first patients. And that's the way Sloan Kettering started. And before that, there was no institutionally structured cancer care. And I think Sloan Kettering was the first in the world, from what I know of, probably the first in America. And that's where we took it.
Did your
But
father
since then, there are other places. There's MD Anderson in Texas. There's Dana-Farber in Boston. There are all these places all over the place. But, historically, the founder is Sloan Kettering.
did your father have conventional treatment too, in addition to changing his?
No, he refused it.
Wow.
That's what I'm telling you. They said, "Oh, you can get 5-fluorouracil. We can give that to you," but there was an 85% no response rate to that drug. That means if you got this chemo, there was an 85% chance it would do nothing for you, and a 15% chance maybe it would shrink it slightly and give you an extra week of survival time. Like, who would take and make you sick and vomiting all the time? So he was a wise person. He said, "You know what? I'm just going to go home and get my orders, my affairs in order." And that's when I went to the library and looked for this book.
Wow. Thank you. What do you remember the name of the book?
Yes. So I don't, it was a book. I'm not sure I can give you the name of the book, but what I can do is I can tell you the name of the person whose story is in the book. And he has an amazing story. His name is, let me just fact check this. His name is, oh, give me 1 second. Norman. His name was Norman Arnold. And you have to remember, let's see, when did my father was 1991 or something like that, 1992. And Norman Arnold had the cancer 10 years before that in the early 80s. And the reason why he's somewhat of a figure is because he overcame this, and he was a pillar of the community of Columbia, South Carolina. And he went on, after he cured himself of the pancreatic cancer, he was a wealthy individual. He was a local businessman, and he went on to fund the University of Carolina School of Public Health. So the School of Public Health at University of South Carolina today is named after him. It's called the Arnold Public School of Public Health, and his story is on that school. So, and his story of overcoming pancreatic cancer, which he always talked about for his entire life. He lived another 40 years after he had this cancer. He just died like in 2016, and he had it in the 1980s, right? So he lived almost 40 years more cancer-free. It was in a book that was published by Michio Kushi of the macrobiotics movement. You know what macrobiotics is, right?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it was a macrobiotics movement book, and they gave us the stories of all the people in there. I remember there was another story we read in this book about a woman named Elaine Nussbaum who wrote her own story. She had a horrific, uterine cancer that had metastasized to her spine, her bones, her lungs, and she adopted the same diet, and she completely cured herself. And the reason why I know this is because from the book, she was a registered dietitian. We went and looked her up, and she was the first person I took my father to. And when she told me this story that she was in a wheelchair because she was paralyzed because the cancer had eaten through to her spine, and I said, "But you're not paralyzed." She said, "Because I cured myself." And she showed me the x-ray. So she was another case that was from this book. Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if
So I think the The moral of this story is, and Chef AJ, this is for you too, right? That I always tell cancer patients, and the reason why my father's story is is powerful is because it lets you know that it's not a fait accompli. It's not, you're not always predestined to fail just because you have cancer. Look at Ruth Heydrich, right? Look at my father. I mean, my father was very advanced case. Look at Elaine Nussbaum. There are patients I know, I have met them in my practice who have cured stage 4 cancers. You can do it. Does everyone do it? No. Do some people do it? Yes.
Yeah,
Have faith.
I'm going to be devoting the whole
Have
month
faith.
of I'm going to be devoting the whole month of January to a series of special shows. I'm going to be going back to doing lives every day, and it's a series called Thriving in the Face of Cancer. So, in addition to featuring doctors like Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Joel Furman, Dr. William Lee, and more, I'm going to be having lots of survivors. I've heard from like a gentleman, 17 years stage 4 lung cancer, 10 years stage
Yeah.
4. Doesn't have to be just be lung, although that's my interest right now. So if you are a long-term survivor, please contact help@chefaj.com if you'd like to tell your story.
Can I make a suggestion to you? There
Sure.
are two beautiful, beautiful people who were they appeared with me in the movie Eating You Alive. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah, I think I was in it actually. I
Were you in it?
think so. Name the people.
Okay.
Is it Dan Muskel?
Yes, have him on your show.
Okay, they've
He
been
has
on
an
the show
amazing
before.
story.
He was kidney cancer, I think, right?
Yeah, deadly, like kidney
Okay.
cancer.
Okay.
And
I'm
it was
obviously
a
not.
late stage.
I don't want to go back to doing lives every day the rest of my life, so I'm not going to be able to have everybody, but I do remember him. And I think they actually came to my house for dinner after the movie, now that I
Yeah,
think about
they're one, and the wife is amazing, and Dan is
it.
amazing.
Cheyenne, I think. Yeah, I remember them.
Shanna,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shanna, yeah,
Dan.
Muscular.
Yeah, I remember him.
You know, he was a before he retired, he was a Canadian Mountie, a Canadian what do they call them? Mountie?
A Rocky Mountain, something like that.
You know what? Like the Doolittle, Rocky, and what was that cartoon when we were growing up with the Canadian Mounted
Oh,
Police?
oh gosh. Dudley Do
Dudley
Right.
Doolittle.
Yeah.
No,
Dudley Do Right.
Dudley Do Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Canadian Mounted Police.
Well, I like that your dad lived his life on his own terms, because the thing that
Yes.
I haven't decided what I'm going to do because I don't have the staging, but I don't want to feel unwell, like, you know what I mean? And just even being in the hospital 9 hours was 9 hours too many because I got a pneumothorax, so I had to stay there extra long on oxygen, waiting to see if I was going
Yeah.
to get a chest tube. And the thought of being admitted to the hospital was very anxiety provoking because
Well,
maybe they had no food.
I know. Yeah, don't eat there.
Yeah.
You know why Dan's story is particularly of interest, potentially to you, Chef AJ? Because from what I remember with Dan's story, they gave him a biologic agent. They gave him one of these like checkpoint inhibitors, one of these, it's not chemo. And these are the drugs that they commonly treat uh, stage 3 or 4 lung cancers with. And who you are and what your tumor markers are. Um, he had a very harrowing story where he was in the early days of these tumor drugs, these biologic agents, and he was in a study from what I remember where they gave him 2 of them at the same time, and they gave him like 1 or 2 doses, and it was so powerful that it almost it inflamed his liver. He was going into liver failure, and they took him out. They refused to give him any more because they didn't want to kill him. Like the doctor at Sloan Kettering first killed his patients, right? With the cancer treatment. And however, what it did was, I believe that these agents awakened his immune system to his cancer, and then it resolved with the diet. The last time I have to connect with him. The last time I spoke to him and Sean was like a number of years ago, but he had already passed his 5-year mark of cancer free. Yeah, on a whole food plant-based diet following that failed treatment. So the thing about my father is he received no other treatment. With Dan, he did receive those two, but he was pulled off of it. So what effect did that treatment have on him? It may have had some effect on him.
I'm going to call him right after the show. But the thing that frustrates me, Dr. Weiss, is
And by the way, both of the treatments he received, they're given for lung cancer today. They're given for non-small cell lung cancer. They're the key treatments for it. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What were you
Oh
saying?
yeah, no. What I was going to say is the thing that puzzles me is it's not like I was eating a crappy diet. I don't know what diet I can switch to. You know what I mean? People are saying, well, you need to go
I
100%
know.
raw. You
Well,
need to
that's a
go
consideration.
macrobiotic, and I'm not sure just throwing a
No,
bunch of.
you shouldn't go macrobiotic. You're eating, just always, because I don't think a macrobiotic diet, it, what we all need is we need a nutritarian diet, right?
Right. Well, Dr. Furman is going to be the first guest on the show. Yeah.
right. What we need is we need to eat as many cancer fighters as we can. That's why what I would do is I would get a consult from Dr. Furman, and or I, I consider myself a protege of Dr. Furman, whoever, but I would eat as many phytonutrients as possible because almost all of them are cancer fighters.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a great start, which I'll save the
Yes,
rest
it
of it for
is.
my dessert for sure after my
Yeah.
lunch. So fantastic. When we were talking about LP little a few people were asking in the chat, what is the exact name of the blood test they should ask their doctor for if they want to get theirs tested?
Lipoprotein, LIPO, protein, it's one word, space, lowercase a. That's it.
That's all there is. And then Lois is asking, what is the test called to ask your doctor for if you want to check the overall inflammation in your body?
There are a lot of inflammatory markers in the body. Personally, what I do is I check a cardiac C-reactive protein because the other name for that is high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It's the same test. Easier to say cardiac C-reactive protein and easier to remember it. That is a subtle inflammation test that is accurately can predict what your chance of having in your whole lifetime, what your chances of having heart attack and stroke. And that is based on subtle levels of inflammation in your arteries. I like that test. That's the one I most commonly get.
Great, thank you. Here's a nice question on cholesterol it's actually on triglycerides from Tim. And Tim would like to know that about his triglycerides. And he's saying that his cholesterol levels have been normal ever since he adopted an SOS-free whole food plant-based diet, but he cannot seem to get his triglycerides down. They're about 400 to 500.
Is he live?
Yes, he is live. So what else
Ask
would
him
you
how
like to
much,
know?
what's his weight and his height.
Okay, so Tim, what is your weight and your height? And then we will move on with the question once we get that information. But in the meantime, I see another question about, oh, this is interesting from CN. Would you say that glyphosate is a major contributor to cancer?
That is a beautiful question. And when I'm thinking of this question, I think of Dr. Esselstyn again. I remember Dr. Esselstyn was here on our farm at one of our farm days, and someone asked the question of him, Dr. Esselstyn, is it important for me to eat organic foods? Do I have to get my vegetables organic? Dr. Esselstyn said no. Just eat vegetables. And in a way, that's my first answer to you. I don't agree with Dr. Esselstyn, I have to tell you. But he's another mentor for me. And I think what he was trying to say in that response is the number one thing is that you have to eat a nutrient dense, you have to eat vegetables. You have to eat a lot of them. We all know remember, they have different terms for it. Dr. You know, Dr. Furman may say nutritarian. Dr. Esselstyn has that greens wrap. Did you ever hear that, Chef AJ? Where he says,
Yes, yes, it's hilarious.
all the beetroots, the dandelion greens, the bok choy, Chinese cabbage, and he keeps going on like a wrap. So that's it. Those are the high nutrient things. We have to eat those. That's number one. If I'd rather eat all those things that are in Dr. Esselstyn's rap song, plus with pests, my health, than eat organic grass-raised beef, free-range chicken, without chemicals, or wild-caught salmon. I think it's healthy. I think it's much healthier for you. But why can't we do both? Why can't we eat? If I'm going to spend so much time and focus and energy and thought process and hard work being at a high level and eating those kinds of nutrients and being so dedicated to plants, why should I have them with a side of poison like glyphosate on it? Glyphosate has been accepted by the World Health Organization as a carcinogen, or a likely, probable, I think the words they use are probable carcinogen. It probably does cause cancer. And let me tell you something. If any regulatory agency that has any worth tells you probably, believe it. It probably is. I'd go on the conservative side with that. There was a jury in California who awarded a janitor, a custodian, $200 million because they thought that his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was a result of his spraying glyphosate Roundup on the schoolyards. Come on. And it goes on and on and on. The bottom line is that pesticides are no good for you. The things that kill our ecosystem, whether they be plants, bacteria, fungi in the soil, the things that they spray on food that kill things, basically they will kill us too. Look, if you're spraying on something that can kill crabgrass or cockroaches, it's not a matter of time. If those things get into us, it's going to kill us. Don't go near it. And the last thing I have to say for glyphosate is beware. You're eating glyphosate, even though you don't know it. Consumer Reports and the Environmental Working Group, they do a lot of good, honest research and work. They've established that if you're eating grains like oatmeal or bread like Arnold whole wheat bread or whatever bread you want to eat that's not organic, if you're eating pasta, whole wheat pasta you think it is, it's not organic. If you're eating lentils or beans, they're not organic. You are most likely eating a lot of glyphosate with it, because now non-organic farmers use glyphosate to dry. They don't even use it for just weed suppression anymore. They use it to harvest their crop. And then that glyphosate is contaminating all non-certified organic grain and legume crops. Don't do it. Get certified organic, and that's your best bet. Yeah.
Great. I have the information on Tim. Tim,
Yeah.
is 6'5" tall, 195 pounds. He has been cutting way back on fruit to just 1 to 2 servings a day, waiting results from recent blood work. Also cut back on grains the last 3 months, subbing potatoes and beans for his starch instead of oats and rice. And what is the danger of having high triglycerides if everything else about him is healthy and normal?
Yeah, let's see about that. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'll try. I you said 6'5" what?
6'5" and 195 pounds. That doesn't sound overweight to me at all.
He is the first normal weight. I'm sorry. For 6'5", he is he just entered the normal weight range for his height. He has a body mass index of 24.5. And without getting, huge amount of detail on him, all I can do is I only have a spare amount of detail about his situation. So I can give you a general direction. I can already tell you that unless you're extremely muscular, what is his name?
Tim,
Ken?
yeah.
Tim? Unless you're extremely muscular, Tim, you're overweight.
At
You are overweight.
195 pounds, he's overweight at
Yes.
6'5".
Yes, because I'm looking at the chart, the body mass index. Unless you are significantly muscular, which I don't know if you are, if you have an average build, I know you're very, very tall, but ask him if he has an average build. If he has an average build, like not, he doesn't look like he's a weightlifter, then he's too overweight because the optimal BMI you should be would be somewhere between, I'm just giving you a range, between 20 and 22, and that would be optimal for living a long life. Those are optimal BMIs for longevity. And what that would mean is that you would have to have a weight of somewhere like 170 to 170 to 180s, somewhere in there. Yeah, I mean that's what it is. There are a lot more details to mine from there. Here's my second suggestion for Tim. If you're not very muscular, so first suggestion is if you know what your visceral fat is, and if you don't, you can get an Omron machine. It's an Omron visceral fat scale. If you have too much visceral fat, that would be associated with a high triglyceride level in your blood. You should work on elevating your diet even more by eating a nutrient-dense, low-calorie diet to lose the visceral fat and incorporating aerobic, high-intensity, and consistent exercise. And if you were to do that, I think that's the secret to you having a low and normal triglyceride.
Thank you. He says he is not overly muscular and just kind of an average build.
There you go. So your weight has not been optimized. Now I suspect that you have too much visceral fat inside of you. You need to work on getting rid of that visceral fat. That's done by high level eating, like the kinds of eating that we've been talking about with Dr. Furman and Dr. Esselstyn, high level, vegetable based eating, greens based eating, and by an intense movement program where you're high intensity, consistent every day, and then you'll get your visceral fat and weight perfect. Okay. And then your triglycerides should be good.
Okay, but what is the danger of having high triglycerides?
Yeah. So I describe, I remember Dr. Clapper once used these terms. And the reason why I use this is because these are all chestnuts from these guys. They're like my teachers. They're like the older generation. I think I'm the next generation. He uses the term the good, the bad, and the ugly. Remember that Clint Eastwood movie?
Yep.
The good is the good cholesterol, the HDL, you want it high. The bad is the LDL, it clogs up your arteries, you want it low. And then there's the ugly. The ugly is the triglycerides. I can't say it's bad, but it's a nefarious character. it's a shady. It hangs around with bad company. It hangs around with characters like diabetes and insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, and it's just not a good guy. So you want to get rid of it. Okay?
Mhm. Okay.
And with that, I think I must take my leave, Chef AJ, although I wish I could stay with you all day. But
Why
I
don't we
just
do
want
that?
to,
Why don't we do a Ronnie-thon?
we should. You said last New Year's we would do
Yeah,
some kind of,
we've done a
go
couple
through a lot of
done-a-thons.
questions.
We can do a
Just
run-a-thon.
talk to Steph. Anything you want, I will do.
Yeah. So
But I
next
just,
month, if you can bring me some thriving in the face of cancer stories, because you'll be on during the specialty month, but of course you'll have
yeah.
your regular slot.
Will it
So
be on the third Friday?
you're always the third Friday, but we're thinking of changing your time to 10 a.m. if that's okay.
Okay, whatever you wish.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Nine's a little early.
I just want to tell you, you're a light unto the nation. You are.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weiss.
Okay, Chef AJ.
All right. Have a great weekend. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ and Friends. Please come back Monday for another favorite, Dr. Brooke Goldner. And we'll be talking a little bit about not waiting until New Year's to start your resolutions. Thanks for all the love. Thanks for all the prayers. Take care.